I just get this weird like rush of like, I can't believe we're doing this. This is so exciting.
Me too.
But yeah, so let's dive in. And this is really cool because I'm in my bedroom because it's the room in our house with the most soft furnishings, and I saw on YouTube that it's better to have more soft furnishings, so this is where the podcast happens. And I love that you're like on the other side of the Pacific in Denver. It is Denver, isn't it?
Seattle, yeah.
Seattle.
Was in Denver for a little bit.
You're in Denver.
Seattle now.
Now you're in Seattle. Oh, so David, for anyone that doesn't know you and definitely needs to know you, would you be able to like just tell us a little bit about yourself, like what you do, what you're all about, and just whatever wants to come through.
Yeah, short answer is I'm a modern day alchemist and I'm a clarity consultant. Long answer. Long answer is I'm a psychic medium. I'm an astrologer. I'm a clarity consultant, so I work with businesses to integrate wellness and raise consciousness in the workplace. And I'm a yoga teacher and spiritual teacher. So I have always had an affinity towards the unseen and the subtle and the occult and the mysterious. I, like many young witches in the 90s, I saw The Craft once when I was like 7 or 8 years old.
What year were you born in?
89.
Okay.
Yeah. Born in 89, so I'm a total 90s baby. But I saw The Craft once and I was like, what is all this feminine power? And yeah, I started studying astrology and a little bit of witchcraft around age 11 or 12, and then eventually swung back into it in my early 20s and started developing my intuition, reading tarot, and then eventually started developing my psychic and medium ability. So it's just been a journey, but yeah.
I love it. I'm like, oh, there's so much I want to talk to you about. And like for you, like what was other than the craft, like how were there people in your life that were interested in all of like mysticism and the occult, or were people like, David, what are you doing?
More so, David, what are you doing? I grew up in the Chicago suburbs and in the Midwest, spirituality, metaphysics, occultism, witchcraft, all of that is, I don't want to say it's not welcome, but it's just not normal, and I think a lot of times, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but like the first time I came to the UK, maybe because of the sphere like I met you in and the type of work I was doing then, I feel like a lot of people overseas over the pond look at Americans as like, we're all about the metaphysics and we're all about, spirituality.
Totally.
I'm like, that's the West Coast. That's why I'm here. That's why I had to move to the West Coast, because the middle and the southern and the eastern cities, they're not so much into it. But it's interesting because a lot of those older cities on the East Coast, that's where a lot of American witchcraft started. Right? It came from you guys essentially and elsewhere. But no, I didn't grow up with, I grew up kind of religious, but no one was around me to kind of spoon feed me spirit or magic. I definitely was kind of born with that wanderlust for it, and was always talking to plants. We would play ghost in the graveyard, like hide and seek, nighttime hide and seek, and I would be hiding and I'd be talking to the moon at night. And I remember being in middle school and I had 2 girlfriends over and we were in my backyard and I was like, we're gonna meditate. And they're like, what? I'm like, come, we're gonna meditate. And we started chanting to the elements and my eyes were shut and I was so serious, so into it.
Oh my gosh, I can see it now.
And one of them put a worm in my hand and I like freaked out, and that they didn't take it seriously, and I ended up like storming off. But I was kind of the closeted gay mystic in school, so I hid it a lot. And it wasn't until I moved to Chicago, the city, when I was 19, and I went to art school, that I became more liberated in my practice and met other people that were like me in that sense. So Yeah, and eventually, you know, one of the big reasons I left Chicagoland and Midwest, I needed a change of life. I had outgrown that city and that region. I heard the call of Colorado. My guides kept showing me Colorado everywhere I went. I met my lover, my partner,
Yeah.
my life partner, Javen. But she lived in Denver at the time. But um, you know, I needed more. I needed to learn more. I needed to be with people who believed in what I believed, and that's why I'm kind of where I'm at now, where I live in the US.
And I think that's so important as you're coming out of like coming out of the spiritual closet alone.
Mm-hmm.
It's, and I think I can imagine and like coming out of the other closet, it's that you
Yes.
need, so you need your people, like you need those people that understand you so that you can find your own way and feel into it. Because I think some people think that spiritual awakening is this like lightning bolt moment and then everything is crystal clear and you know your
Totally.
purpose, and it just doesn't work like that. There's so many questions that come from that awakening, and having those people around you, and it is, I think, taking that leap of faith to find those people and position yourself with those people, and even not knowing that those people are going to be there.
Yes.
And allowing them to be
consistently
guided.
curate it too, because I think one of the hardest things for not even just, you know, spiritual people or magical people or conscious people is just any human is we outgrow our soulmates. So we have soulmates when we're children, we have soulmates in our family, we have soulmates who are our first love and our best friends, our coworkers, and yeah, we have different tribes for different times in our life, and it's letting go at times, and it's moving it around, or it's coming back too. It's always fun when, you know, you think a path with somebody is over, and then later in life you're like, oh wow, we're still here in a way.
Yeah. And I think that's something to also just honor, like those people that do stay, even though you have very different interests, they're always there. And like there's something, and like even I think I found it personally, like people at the beginning were like, Tamara, what are you doing? Like my mum, I'm always a little bit envious of people like, yeah, my mum is really spiritual and I just wasn't into it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, if my mum was like that, I would be soaking that up.
Same. Yes. I found that I actually have a really a great friend who's a reader and intuitive, and she was raised by an intuitive. And when I met her, I was like, what was that like? And she's like, honestly, it was kind of hard. Like, couldn't hide things, you know, everything had to become like a conversation about my feelings and like what that actually means. And I have found the few people I know that were raised like that, they almost kind of shy away from it. Move away.
It's classic, isn't it? It's just difficult.
Yeah. And we have me and Javen, you know, we don't need to have children, but maybe one day we will. But we had a friend once ask us, like, okay, so if you had a child, say you had a daughter, and she wanted to be a scientist or a politician, you know, what would you say? And I'm like, oh, she's like, and she didn't want to be a psychic or an artist, you know, or an agriculturist. I was like, oh, like I would let her be who she wants to be.
I would love that.
Of course.
But she would be surrounded by crystals.
Yes, absolutely. And she would be clairvoyant AF. Absolutely.
And like, is your partner spiritual?
Yeah. He is. In his own way. Right? His own magician in a way. But it was my last partner too he was actually a Reiki healer and whatnot. And he's kind of the one who made me realize I was intuitive and whatnot. But I need that in a partnership. Because sometimes I just have not crazy, but sometimes I have wild ideas where I'm like, or, you know, this just happened to me, I need somebody to bounce it off of. And he plants a lot of seeds for me, consciousness wise, and then I'm kind of the one that grows them a little bit.
I love that teamwork.
Yeah, it's a nice flow.
Yeah, because I was saying that's interesting, because some people, I get asked that all the time, like, is your boyfriend like spiritual? Like, does he do any rituals? I'm like, he's spiritual in his own way. So he's very into ancient civilizations
So
and learning about those like learning about those cultures and
Yeah.
things like that, but he's not going to do a full moon ceremony. Like
Uh-huh.
he's not necessarily, but he's open to it and he's supportive. But also if he has a crystal in his hand, he'll feel its energy, like just
Totally.
naturally, like no like never done a workshop in his life, but he's like, oh, this like just comes through and it's like, oh, this feels like this or whatever. So there's something there. But yeah, like I said, I think people are always like curious, like, oh, like what is the pet, like, are you both witchy or?
Yeah.
And then when they meet my boyfriend, they're like, oh my gosh, he's not how I thought he was going to be, because he's like, he works in construction. He's got like a beard and like it isn't like wearing, then I think they think he's going to wear tie-dye or some like baggy RE trousers or something.
He's a construction witch.
Yeah, exactly. in his own way. But like with your alchemy work and the way that you work with your clients, and like whether it's within groups and with people, how would you describe your approach? Like what do you feel like your way of doing things is?
Yeah, I always say I let spirit take the wheel and I let spirit drive the car. And that can be hard sometimes too, because as I've grown in my own evolution and my practice and whatnot, and, being a quote type of healer or a spiritual practitioner, a psychic, whatever, sometimes we can pitch and we can project our own healing and our own stuff onto people. And I think it's something that a lot of practitioners in the space don't talk about. And there's so much inner work when you do this type of work. There's so much inner work that you have to keep up and maintain. So, whenever I work with a client right away in the morning, I become very aware and conscious of where my brain waves are at, where my energy's at. And I don't try to fix anything. I just try to be with it. Yeah. And then, maybe that day, the alchemy for me is a run, or maybe it's prayer, it's meditation, or maybe it's a big brunch that feels indulgent, right? Or whatever. And I make sure to nourish me. And then I sit with my stuff and I make sure that I'm a clear vessel, essentially, so that I don't bring a bias into work. But I have a few different ways that I work with clients and students right now. So I give intuitive readings, which are mediumistic in nature. I connect with the client's guides and their spirit teams. So sometimes it's deceased loved ones, sometimes it's angelic beings, sometimes it's light beings, sometimes it's guides from past lives that they don't know, but they're on the other side for them in this incarnation. And really those intuitive readings are to anchor down the wisdom of their higher self so that they have tangible advice to take outside of the reading. I do soul coaching, so those offerings and the way I approach that is they're longer in nature. There is a reading in it, but it's a little bit more consultation involved, where in the readings I tend to just jump right in, and I just let spirit give me the messages. Soul coaching, I work with the client a little bit more to figure out where they feel they are, where they want to be in their blockages. Then we do a reading, and then there's some type of integration and practice. So it might be energy work that I guide them to do on themselves. It might be meditation, it might be trance visualization, it might be movement. And I love doing those because I really get to work with someone month over month or season over season and watch them grow and flourish. And the goal, I always say, is that I want people to be with their own intuition and their own alchemy, so that they don't need to call me, or they don't need to see me. I mean, if they want to, beautiful. And I have some clients I've worked with for years that we chat on the phone, or I'll give them readings once in a while. But I really want people to know that psychic ability and the spirit world is real, and that we all can connect with it. And then the last way that I work with clients or students more so is I do intuitive and psychic development. So I do a 4-week course, and then I also have an additional 4 to 6 week course, which is all one-on-one. We follow a curriculum, but I customize it for each student, and we work on expanding their intuition first, having them create and cultivate a connection with their higher self. That's different for everybody. And then eventually, if they want to, I share things that I've learned on how to read without the use of an oracle. So how to, as I call it, psychically stream. And we get a little bit into mediumship. We get into different pathways of psychic reading. And that's so cool because that's an adventure. It's different every time with somebody. But yeah, those are the few different ways.
Wow. And then because before, I'm like, which I think is really interesting that you worked in, would you call it the beauty industry?
Yeah, for sure.
Without saying without saying names.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked so I worked in the beauty industry for about 12 years. And my sister, so I have two older sisters, my sister Jill, she was an educator with Redken for a long time. And I was just coming out of my early witchy phase around 12. And she was in beauty school at that time. And I was her guinea pig. And I mean, my sister always loved the makeup and the cosmetics. And, you know, I was a young gay. And she knew it. She knew it before I did. But, you know, I'd be her guinea pig, and she's like, I want to try this color out, or let's dye your brows, let's tweeze off all your brows, like, you know. And then eventually that became me exploring femininity and feminine power and transformation. So I found myself in the beauty industry working for a Chicagoland salon and spa for a few years. And then eventually I came to work for Sephora, and I was a makeup artist and educator for them. And I went to art school for years, and I was really close to stepping into the art world, but something pulled me into the beauty world. And I'm a Taurus, I'm a Libra moon, I'm very
That makes so much
very Venusian.
Yeah.
So beauty and all of that and luxury, I loved it. And I just loved working in that industry. That is the industry where really I started realizing, like, wow, I love helping people transform. I like being a mirror for people to show them their light, because I would have a woman or a man in my chair, and I would, you know, people's pain comes out when it comes to their reflection and it comes to image, because we're put up against so many matrices of how we're supposed to be. And just seeing somebody transform from, you know, learning how to put a facial oil on and like take care of themselves in a way, to rocking a red lip, to doing a cat eye or whatever, it was powerful. So I eventually left. I started working for brands as an educator and a sales manager. And yeah, that's how we met. I worked for a natural beauty brand called Herbivore, and Herbivore was so good because I was able to blend everything with mysticism and metaphysics that was blooming for me with my background of beauty, and was able to kind of exist in both realms when I worked for them, and just left at the end of the year to work for me. So beauty's it's like in my blood though. I feel one day I'll return to it, not in the way that I worked in it, but who knows, maybe I'll come out with intentional products one day on a small scale. We'll see.
Love it. I can't wait for that product line.
Yeah,
Especially
we'll
with everything that you know from, like, as being an industry insider.
Yeah, and it's wild inside. It is. There's, you know, it's there's a lot of competition. I mean, any industry, but in beauty, there's a lot of competition, and the beauty landscape has changed so much. I mean, in the last few years, you know, we were talking about Cancer North Node a little bit last time we spoke, but you know, it became beautiful to take care of yourself, and not in a way of concealing or covering up, but in a way of actually caring for thyself. So that has really shifted the beauty industry, and you know, a lot with racial divide right now too, right? The beauty industry is so biased to a certain skin tone, it always has been, or a certain type of beauty, a shade or quality of beauty. So it's changed a lot, and I think it will keep changing.
Yeah, I thought, look, this is just the beginning, isn't it? It's so interesting because I used to be a hairdresser, and I used to, for a little while.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I used to work for Tony and Guy. I used to be a colour technician, and then I worked for L'Oreal as a field tech, and I'd go around and educate. It was just the worst year of my life. I don't think I even
Yeah.
made it a year. It's like you said, so competitive, so
Yes. A lot of intense energy in that
yeah.
industry from
And
people.
back
Yeah.
then I didn't know about I I didn't know about energy back then. So I was just like soaking it all up.
Yes.
And all these things going like might well back then I would if I knew what I know now, I'd have trusted my intuition and not gone for the job. Like my intuition was like, don't go for it, you're selling your soul to the devil. Everyone else was like, you'll get a company car, the money's good.
Yes.
And at that age, I think I must have been about 20,
Very L'Oreal.
24, yeah,
Uh,
23, 24. And I was like, okay, like yeah, of course, like I need the Audi and the thing. And then as soon as I started, I was like, this is not where I am meant to be, and I can't get out.
And I find in retail, like not just in beauty, but in retail, so many people who work in it or service,
Mm,
customer service, and again, they hold a lot of pain in their body. And
mhm,
I mean, especially even now during a pandemic where everything's so skewed and you're out there so somebody can buy their lipstick or,
yeah.
get their expensive chair or whatever it is. But, you know, I've when I was in retail for a few years and I knew I was going to be in it longer, I was like, I think it's weird that we rush to university or college
Mhm,
after high school. I feel like it should be the normal to take 2 years off and everybody should have an office job,
mhm,
like an entry level office job. Everyone should work in retail and everyone should work in food service
mhm,
in those 2 years and just kind of get a vibe because they teach you a lot, but it's intense work interacting with people all
mm,
the time or being in a hive in an office with
yeah,
people. It's different too.
yeah. And I think when you're empathic, whether you realize it or not, that can be so challenging. And I think that's like, I'm grateful that I've learned it now, and I woke up to it quite late in my hairdressing in like career, into like what energy is and how to manage my energy and all of these different things, and kind of realizing sometimes I would be at the salon doing someone's hair, and I remember this one time like so vividly, and this woman was talking to me, and in my head I was like, how do I ask her to stop talking? Like I can't still ask her to stop talking. Like
Oh no.
my anxiety was just like I was like, how? I was like just weaving these highlights, like how like I don't know if I can do this. But then because it had come out of nowhere, and then when I walked away, and now like later I was like, I think that I was feeling her anxiety. That's why she was talking so much. That's
Yes.
why she didn't stop talking. She couldn't
And
stop
you're so
talking.
intimate, you're touching,
Yeah,
right?
you're like so close. And all of my clients would always be like, oh, like I feel so good now. And I'm like just drained. Like,
Totally.
but I remember when I left, so a lot of my clients were really upset. And they were like, what am I gonna do without you? Like,
Because you're a healer.
yeah.
So many people in those roles, they're either therapists or the empaths.
Mm,
There's a transference of
mm,
energy. And that's something, especially now when there's such radical shift and transformation in our collective energy,
it's
as a
fast
human
tracks.
race.
Mm,
It's like, what energy is the best for me to be around?
mm,
And it's hard when you're working because in those types of jobs, if you're doing hair, if you're in retail, if you're waiting at table, you don't really have a choice. It's
no,
being
yeah.
this person. So then
Yeah.
it's, how do I take care of my energy? How do I
Mm,
protect my psychic energy? And how do I cleanse it and
yeah.
keep the hygiene?
Yeah, whenever I'm talking to people that work in retail now, like if they're like, what crystal do I buy if I'm at events and things, and I'll talk, because I know what it feels like. You need this to protect your energy.
Yeah.
You get home.
Tourmaline.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, tourmaline or black obsidian. I was like, I bet you get home and you don't want to talk to anyone because you've got nothing left. And they're like, yeah, how do you know? Like, yeah, because I used to do that, because you're giving so much. And I think when you're not aware of that, you unconsciously absorb energy that's not yours. Whereas when you have an awareness, you can create a
Mhm.
boundary. And I think also when people are empathic, they unconsciously dive into other people's energy.
Yes.
So it's like whether it's you're the person that everyone comes to with their problems, or your people are just attracted to you. I'm always like, I can't sit somewhere still on my own for too long, because there'll always be someone that comes and
Mhm.
sits next to me and starts telling me their life story.
Yes.
But
You're just like, okay, hello.
yeah, you're like, okay. My friends always like,
Yeah.
don't make eye contact. It's because you make eye contact.
Yeah.
I don't want to like be closed off. But there is something, I think, when people are, oh, I'm just feeling so much, it's like, just check in. Are you diving into that? When someone is coming to you with a situation or a problem, are you making it yours when it doesn't need to be? Because when you are, and when you're in that space, when you're diving in and swimming around sometimes a lot of bullshit with someone else's bullshit, you're drowning with them, and you're
Yeah.
not, you're not in that grounded space. It's just checking in, like, am I in my body right now as this person is talking to me, or have I just taken it, like just put on their, jumped into their body?
Yes. It's like the thirsty fixer archetype.
Mm,
They're just it's so subconscious. They're fixing all the time. They don't,
mm,
and they have a thirst for it. And for empaths too, and sensitives, anything. I think it validates how they feel when somebody else finally expresses how they feel. So
mm,
like, this happens to me all the time where I'm like, gosh, I feel off. And then I'm like, oh, it's it's them. My partner's moody right now, and he's just not saying anything. So there are moments, if I'm that thirsty fixer, I'm like, how are you today? What's going on? Is
mm.
everything, I zoom in. And
That
really,
thirsty
sometimes we need to just let people be people.
mm,
And yeah, and put up our own boundaries, or detach, or try to be separate a little bit.
mm. But I think it's hard when you live with someone. I know, like, my boyfriend's not a talker at all, so he'll be like, "I'm fine," but you're not, and I can feel
Yeah.
it. Can we just talk about
Yes.
this, get this out of the way, because I'm feeling this. Like, how long are you going to drag this on for? Because
That's the Aries in you,
yeah,
for sure. Yeah,
completely.
and I'm Taurus. Taurus and Aries, we're just head on. We're like, let's get through this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Let's just be brutally honest and just move on to the next thing.
Mhm.
But what would you, how would you say, what does being intuitive mean to you? Because I think intuitive is something that's getting thrown around a lot. It's a buzzword, and I think I see, I'm like, but is that what you mean by intuitive? And it's open to interpretation anyway. Like, what I think is
Yes.
intuitive isn't the right thing. I'm not saying that, but what I'm curious to know is, like, what does it being intuitive mean to you?
Yeah. Intuitive to me is sensing energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Sensing shifts, sensing subtle energy. So by subtle, I mean things that aren't dense. So, somebody's uh, emotionality in their aura would be subtle versus the emotionality on their face, right? Or in their words, right? So intuitive is sensing, and it's picking those things up: emotions, energy, thought forms,
Mm-hmm.
shifts. I had a friend who just spent a few days in the woods for a vision quest. He's a shamanic practitioner, and he was out there for 3 days. No food, no water, no shelter. 3 days with spirit, right? And he was talking, like, by his third day, and it's dry and hot this time. Everybody thinks Seattle's rainy. It's not in the summer. And it's actually, they complain so much here. It's not that rainy in the winter, but at this time it's very dry and hot. We get forest fires. So he was out there, and by the third day, he he just all of a sudden was like, it's about to rain. I know it's about to rain. And in a few minutes it rained, and we haven't had rain in, I think, over a month. And I said to him, I'm like, well, you became so connected with that land and
Mm.
that air and the spirits of that forest that you knew the moment the pressure changed, and you smelled the moisture in the air. And that, to me, that is intuitive, right?
Mm.
Because you're sensing something's different, it's shifted. So intuitive, it is, I see what you, yeah, it's totally a buzzword right now.
Mm.
I feel we're all intuitive, and we all have different ways that we are intuitive. Some people are really intuitive with communication and speech, right? They can hear a lie, or
Mm.
they can hear what's underneath, right? So you're sensing, the words are one way, but I'm sensing a tone.
Mm.
Or you're saying you're sorry, but you're not sorry. Some people are very intuitive or sensitive with emotions, right? So we're empaths and whatnot. Some people are very intuitive with nature and animals. Some people are intuitive with collective energy, and some people are kind of a mix. And then when we have psychicism, or being psychic, and mediumship, if intuitive is sensing energy, psychic, to me, is reading energy,
Okay.
right?
So
And
they're like the
actually,
two, they kind of come together. So
yeah,
it's like the feeling, but then understanding.
understanding, yes, and that streaming. of it a little bit more, because within psychicism, we step into our psychic senses. So clairvoyance, clairaudience, claircognizance, and clairsentience, or clear seeing, clear hearing, clear knowing, and clear feeling or clear sensing. And with psychicism, with reading energy, the difference with the two is like, okay, let's say you walk into a party, or let's say you work in retail, or you work in a restaurant, you walk into the space. Intuitive ability is something feels off here. What's weird? Something's weird here. It feels heavy here. God, I don't know what that is. And then psychic ability or psychic energy is all of a sudden being like, whoa, it's from right over there.
Mm-hmm.
That human being is having a hard day. Wow. Okay, what's going on? They're in a victim mode. Okay, what does that victim mode mean? And then, we have to have our own psychic boundaries. We talk so much about energetic and psychic boundaries from the outside in, but as intuitives, as sensitive, as empaths, as we discussed, what are our psychic boundaries from our side out? So am I going to dive in?
Yeah.
Is that my business, first of all? And then B, is that for my health? Is that going to bring me ease knowing that or whatnot? And I think sometimes there's a belief with psychics or mediums that we're always on, and we're not.
No.
Yes, right? It's not like,
they're like, are you reading me now? It's like, no, I
we're
don't
not
work
in
like
your
that.
head.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not in your head. I don't hear your thoughts. I can feel thoughts,
Yeah.
but I'm not with them. And when we do our work, as you know, that is a stream, because we're working with universal energy and for the greatest good. Mm-hmm. So I have more clarity in a session than I do in my own life, because in my own life, it doesn't maybe always serve the greatest good or the collective for me to be reading that victim energy across the room, right? But as an example, yeah, so, intuitively you walk into a space, you can sense something's off. Psychically, it's identifying that, or it's also starting to see the psychic energy. Like, oh, those two are in quite a energetic mismatch. I'm not going to interact. That person, there's something, so let's say I'm in a bar. That person seems a little bit too much on the spirit, the substance spirit for me.
Yeah.
And then mediumship is that bridge to the spirit world. Mm-hmm. So it's using our psychic senses as a platform and our intuition as a foundation to then create a bridge into the world of spirit and connect with our guides, connect with higher consciousness, connect with deceased loved ones, any of that, and nature, spirits, so on and so on. But I could go on and on about that, but I think that answered question.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like, I love it how you're breaking it down in that way, because you kind of see the different, I don't want to say levels or like tiers, but it's like the first is like the intuitive, it's that sensing, and then it goes on to the psychic of understanding what it means, and the next level, if you want to kind of go into this other dimension,
totally, because it is
connecting with other energies and spirits and communicating with them. And I'm sure people are listening, like, oh, how can I like, maybe not like, I think it can bring up a lot of fear for people, because they're like, what if something bad comes through, because that's what you see in the movies, isn't it?
Totally. Yes, that's the biggest thing. Well, everyone is, when I work with students too, because what we do in the first month when we work on intuition is we work on blockages, we work on belief systems and fear, because a lot of people have belief, I can't do that, or that isn't possible, or I don't want to see something that I don't want to see. And I have never, and we're all different, I have never seen, a sixth sense image of like, that is not how spirit presents themselves. They present themselves very loving. Some people see light. Some people will see actual characteristics. That happens with me. Sometimes people see memories. So like, why am I seeing, a garden with a blue fence? And then someone's like, wow, that was my grandmother's garden. So spirit is not here to spook you out. No. And if it is, and that's another conversation, that's energy you don't want to swim in. But there's a whole spectrum of energy out there. But when we have intention, and when we're connecting with spirit in our heart and in our truth and authenticity for our greatest good and the greatest good of all, you're going to get a certain stream of spirit that's beautiful and healing and magical, and sometimes it is like the movies, really, to work with. So yeah,
it is. And that's the thing, I think I remember before I started, I've always been into crystals and the tarot, and just curious about it. But I think when I'd go for readings, and I think it was just what everyone says, they're just reading you. It's your body language, or you're giving it away. Like, so I always kind of was like, oh, is that what's happening? But how do they know this about me? Yeah, like how do they, like, oh, have we got like we've got an M?
Totally.
And it's just like, no, an F then? It's like, no, Z. Like, but I remember, like, but I'd have readings, like tarot readings, and they would know things about me that no one else could know, you know, as if they'd read. I remember a woman that I used to go to for tarot readings, and like thoughts that I'd had deep down in I hadn't admitted to anyone about this guy that I was seeing, and she just like called it out, and I was like, whoa, like there's something that you can't, like, and even then I'm like, what body language did I give away to give her that information? But it wasn't until I started going to psychic development circles, because I think I'd kind of started having my spiritual awakening, and I ended up going to Burning Man, and I thought that was going to be like the spiritual awakening, and it wasn't. I came back like, whoa, what happened?
It was probably fun though.
Yeah, it was really fun, but I think I was attached. I was attached to the outcome. I was attached. I think I very much thought I was going to go to Burning Man and be completely liberated, feel like a completely new, free person, and I didn't. I was just very hungover and dusty.
Totally.
I was dreadlocked.
Dirty, yeah.
I was very naughty.
You probably had a bunch of bracelets.
Yeah. Like all of my clothes were ruined by like player dust. And then I came back, and then I had a reading with someone, because again, it's that classic, like, I need an answer, like what is going on, and have a reading. And she was just like, you're meant to be doing this. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, you're meant to be doing this. And she's like, come to mind for this psychic development circle. And then we went and we were doing these practices, and I just knew stuff that I didn't even, I was like, how do I know? How do I know this? Like, what is this? Like this like craft magic going on? And it was so, like, again, I can feel people are like, oh my God, how do I sign up for David's course? Like, I'm like, with David, how do I learn about these things? But it's something, like you said, it's something that everybody has, but it's not, we're not taught how, unless you you find the right people and you sign up to the course, like we have to develop it. It's trust, and it's something that we haven't used before, so it takes a lot. Like you were saying, like before, it's not that easy. Like, yeah, I know the answers. It is challenging, like, because you're pushing these boundaries of what we think we know, to what our intuition is guiding us towards. Because as loving as our intuition can be, it doesn't always tell us what we want it to hear. Like, doesn't always tell us what we want to hear. And and we can cherry pick. It's like, oh yeah, my guide told me to buy this crystal. But then the guide's like, dump that guy, I can't hear you, where have they gone?
Yeah, what do I need to know about this tower card? Putting that back in.
Wrong. Like the signal's dropped. And what for you, like, what's helped you trust your psychic abilities and your intuition? Like, have there been any moments where you've been like, right, I'm not ignoring that again, that was real?
I got kind of chills on my back when you said that, because those are the moments where it's like seared into you. And sometimes that's how we learn intuition or no intuition, just through life. It's the painful memories or the painful moments that teach us the most, because we're in a realm of duality, and we learn. We're students of duality when we incarnate here, when we come here. With, I have a few things, sorry, I was like trailing off in my head a little bit but with intuition, with the trust and everything, it's so important to have what I call psychic soulmates, because when you're developing your intuition, your psychic ability, energetic awareness, whatever your path is, your connection with spirit, your higher power, you're going against the mainstream. So Yes, it's you are. It's been starting to become with social media and the way that communication is, it's been starting to become more known. There's more resources. There is a global awakening that has been happening for decades, and it's each year it gets bigger. But you're still going against the mainstream of our systems and our governments and the matrices of how we're supposed to be human. So that's hard for most of us. The way that we were raised and the way that we were told to make our money and the way that we were told to find a partner or lover or whatever our life is, it doesn't include that type of ability and that type of higher wisdom or power. So there's so many beliefs there, and there's a distrust collectively against you. I don't want to say it's against you, but it can feel like that at times.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's important to have people that you can talk to about your experiences. Like, hey, I was meditating and, I don't ever see anything, but all of a sudden this started happening. Has that ever happened to you? Or, I was in a bath and, I could start to tell that I had energy blocked in this area of my body. It was really weird. I moved it away with my hands. Or just having these people in the support system, whether it is a psychic development circle, it's a one-on-one mentor, or it's a buddy of yours that you can talk about what you're reading. That community is so important. And that's something that I don't want to say I didn't have. I wish I had more of. It wasn't my path. I think that's why I teach the psychic arts now, because I want people to not feel alone with that journey. And I want people to have, in my younger years, what I didn't have. So there's the thirsty fixer coming out, right? But
Take a
the
sip.
trust, yes, but the trust part, I was asked that by a student when we started 2 months ago, and he asked what allowed you to really start trusting this? And I was like, it wasn't the small shit. It was the big stuff. It was leaving the partner that we weren't good for each other anymore and we were holding on. It was leaving, the city that I was comfortable in to go be by myself across the country. It was leaving a job that I was tired from. It was taking a leap from an industry that I was used to a certain level of abundance, and leaving it meant financially it would change and all that. It's the big moments that spirit's like, I want you to believe, or your higher self's like, I want you to come, and you got to take the jump. For me, those are the times that built it. And it's so loud. I know. I hope I'm getting better at it. I think I do. It becomes so loud when you're in a place of intense suffering, when there's a lot of compression, when there's a lot of pressure. That's an indication that, we have to look at things different right now. So just because you're intuitive, because you're spiritual, because you practice witchcraft, because you read tarot cards, any of these things, it doesn't mean our life is perfect. And that we still have intense stuff we go through, but it gives us a compass. It gives us a lamp, it gives us a sword, and it gives us clarity, so that when we're in the valley and the shadows of life or the harder times, that maybe we don't have to be on that trail so long. Maybe the lesson doesn't have to make us suffer so much, because we can see it quicker and we can get out of it quicker. But trust is hard, even to this day. As somebody who reads for people, I have moments when I'm in sessions and I'm like, I feel like I'm making this up, and I just say it because it comes through and it's big for somebody. And that's what my first psychic mentor, Audra Garcia, she taught me early on. She was like, if it feels like you're making it up, it's probably real.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And she's like, I know that sounds weird, but that's how it works. You're just it comes through. So trust is it's a hard quality for humans. And there's so much right now in the world that we don't trust. We don't trust how we've been set up to live often. We don't trust, at least in the US, we don't trust government to take care of us. We don't always trust each other to take care of each other, right? So it's a big thing.
Yeah, it is massive. I remember doing a Reiki treatment for someone, and I was doing the treatment, and I just had this cartoon ghost come through, and I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I was like, what? Why? Like, so my my kind of my psychic, my clairs that come through to the strongest as like clairvoyant, clairsentient, and or like I hear things. But I remember like seeing this ghost and I was like doing the street, I'm like, why are you there? And the ghost is like, woo, but literally that's how it sounded, like, woo, because he's scared of us. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, I'm making this up, like this, where has this come from, like why is this coming through? Because normally I get other things that is more realistic and that seem more tangible, not cartoon ghosts anyway. So after the session I was like talking it through, and I'd written it down. I was like, I can't say I've seen these ghosts, I can't, like, but then I was like, okay, just he can take it or leave it, can't he? So I said, look, I've seen these ghosts, these cartoon ghosts. He's like, oh my god, I'm so scared of ghosts. I won't, like, grown man, married, like, he wouldn't go downstairs at night because he's so scared of ghosts. So that's why they came through as these like cartoons.
Yes.
Irrational childhood fear that he can't get over. And that was really powerful for me because I resisted that. I was like, that can't be that, I'm making that up. Like, where does that come from?
Right.
You do have to sometimes like not have attachment to it and say, okay, like this is, because the messages we're getting, as you know, they're not for us. They will be communicated in a way, if it's for someone else, that they understand it. Like we might be like, I don't know what this means, I don't know why I'm seeing this like blue car or blue fence, but that other person know instantly. Or sometimes they don't know straight away, and then they come back later and they message you and they're like, I know what that blue car was. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, because sometimes the message isn't in the present, it's later down the road.
Or people resist it. They want to attach the answer to something else. So they're like, no, I don't know. And once they've had like a moment to think about it, it just drops in, and like they feel the connection.
Yes. And the cartoon ghost, that's so important for people who are wanting to develop their psychic senses or intuition, because like clairvoyance, and even with you, like I heard you didn't mention claircognizance. I feel like claircognizance.
Well, yeah, that is one of mine as well. Sorry, claircognizance. Okay, yeah, definitely.
I feel like that's one that everybody has, but it's the hardest to trust because it feels like your own thoughts. And I've noticed that the other psychic senses, so clear hearing, clear seeing, and clear sensing, almost specifically clear seeing, will work as kind of like the title of the chapter. And then claircognizance comes to write it. Yes. So then, I see the cartoon ghost, and then I honor that and I say that, and symbolically that means something. And then the claircognizance comes on to kind of stream. But we all have a psychic symbolism. So, for each reader, they have their own psychic symbolism, but then a client or a sitter, wherever the message is going, they have their own psychic symbolism. So as a reader and as a channel or conduit, you get a combination of each. And it's hard because you see a cartoon ghost and you're like, what the heck does this mean? This is so silly, but it's something to his subconscious. And that's clairvoyance. I found it uses the language of dreams, which is the language of our subconscious. So if you can understand the subconscious language, which takes time to learn, it's good to like journal it. You can start to track it a little bit.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing with like dreams, it's like dream interpreting, like what a cartoon ghost might mean for one person, someone else could think something else.
Absolutely.
And I think when people are starting to get to know their intuition, it's not like, I've seen this, look it up, what does that mean? It's like I was like asking those, why are you here? Like, what are you about? Rather than going to Google and being like, what does cartoon ghost mean? Like, Google's going to be like, Casper.
That's a good, like Google and books and all that, those are good stepping stones. But everybody eventually, even learning the spirit of animals and the symbolism of those, everyone's going to have their own interpretation, or what green means to you means something different to me. There's a dream psychologist, I forget her name, I'm so horrible with names, but I watched this interview with her, and she was talking about when she works with clients, in somebody's dream, they're like, let's say the client's father dies in their dream, and they come and they freak out and they're like, is it premonitory? Is my dad gonna die? And she had a percentage of how much premonitory dreams happen, and it's small. There are some people that premonition comes a lot in dreams, but she calms the client down, and then she asks, what does your father or a father represent symbolically to you in your life?
Mm-hmm.
And then the client might say, stability, or, maybe it's they're not involved in my life, all these different things. And then she says, okay, well, that, whatever that symbolism is of that is what needs to die in your life, or that is dying, not your
Whoa.
father. Because everyone in the dream is you. When we're in a dream, it's our subconscious. So if my best friend is in my dream, which happens all the time, I see one of my best friends who lives in Brooklyn, like almost like through the quarantine and pandemic, like every Saturday night she would be in my dream, we'd be hanging out, and then I'd wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm socially lonely, I need my girlfriends, right? So my subconscious gave me that friendship to kind of show me like, hey, call one of your friends, or go have a socially distanced parked visit or whatnot. But yeah, the subconscious is wild.
It is. Even like even as you're saying, like everyone in your dream is you. It just feels so. It feels like an acid trip.
It is, yeah.
When
Well,
you
and then
start to think of it.
I talk about this with my yoga teacher, because I teach yoga nidra, which is dream or sleep yoga. And you're guided into a dream, like an in-between dreaming state. It's quite amazing. But we talk about all the time, because she has really vivid nidras like I do. And I don't know if this ever happened to you. Have you ever had a dream in a dream before?
Yeah.
So if you can have it, and what I mean by that, like if anyone's listening, like, you're in a dream and then you wake up from the dream and you're like, oh, I was dreaming, but then you wake up from that dream. And then it takes you like an hour, you're laying in your bed, like, am I awake? Like, where am I? But if we can dream in a dream, then what the fuck is this? Like, what is this then?
Yeah.
Is this one big dream?
Oh
So,
gosh.
right? Talk about acid trips.
So my brain's just melted.
Yeah, everybody in the dream is you. And then at the same point, I mean, that's a common spiritual principle, is that, everybody is you.
Yeah.
It's just
Everyone,
we're
yeah.
all energy.
Reflection.
So yeah, I start to get really like, whoa,
Yeah.
we should reel it back in a little bit.
But for anyone that's like wanting to learn more about developing their psychic superpowers, like what would you recommend?
Yeah.
What are your top tips?
First and foremost, and this is said so much, and everybody who is hearing this, they know this too, but meditation,
Yeah.
like meditation.
They're probably eye
People
rolling, like, oh no, I
say,
just don't want to do it.
yes, and I'm gonna be real, like some days I don't want to fucking meditate, and sometimes it's hard, but usually once you're in it, it starts to feel good. I really don't I mean, I get it, that's a different podcast, but I really don't get why we don't teach children meditation.
Oh yeah.
Like, in my life, that's something later that I want to start doing, is working with children to teach them conscious movement, conscious thought form, and meditation. We need to learn how to be out of our head, and just to be aware of our head, and to be in our heart, and to be with our body. So those few things, meditation helps you do that. And meditation's not linear. There's many ways to do it. It's not always sitting for 20 minutes in silence, right? There's transcendental meditation, there's visualization. You could walk and meditate. You could play music, be in a trance state. You could journal. I mean, to me, it's very multifaceted. The point of meditation to me is to strengthen one's receptivity. So any practice that allows you to feel receptive to yourself, to your body, to your thoughts, to what you're needing and what nourishes you, and to your environment, that is meditative to me. So meditation, first and foremost. I think journaling about experiences is so important. I'm a big fan of journaling. I think it's huge to be able to go back through life and look at an entry from 5 years ago and see, oh, I was dealing with this, just a different version. But when you're starting to get visions, or when you're starting to be a truth detector, when you're starting to sense things or hear things, record it somehow. There's like 4 qualities to a mystical experience, and one of the qualities is that they're fleeting, they're ephemeral. So it's, you have it, it's like I think anybody listening to this podcast has probably seen repetitive numbers, or maybe has been driving and all of a sudden they see a message on like a billboard or an advertisement that speaks to their thoughts. And that synchronicity, you feel it in your body, but it's fleeting. And when you go to tell somebody else about it, people are like, oh, that's really cool, but they weren't there, they don't get it. Kind of becomes an inside joke with you in the universe. And I think it's important to record it somehow so that you have it for you, and you can also track how it develops. And recording psychic symbolism is so important. So with clairaudience, somebody's psychic symbolism might come through the form of songs. My guides, my ancestors will often sing a song to indicate something, and I might not even be in meditation or dialogue, and let's say I'm reluctant about something, I'm nervous, I'm afraid to go do XYZ, I'll hear a song by Garbage which is called Go Baby Go Go, and the lyrics are yeah, it goes go baby go go, we're right behind you, go baby go go. And it's encouraging. I have chills as I hear it now. So how often do we just hear songs in our head and you start singing it, but slow down and actually like look at the words. What's being said to you? Is that your higher power? Is that your guide giving you a message? Record that. What does that mean? Record what it means to see a cartoon ghost. And the last thing, read, expand, explore, educate yourself, talk to people. Everybody's psychic ability is different. And I already talked about the importance of a psychic support system. So if that looks like a mentor, a teacher, if that looks like a platform where somebody shares a lot of amazing ideas and content, a book, a good friend, share and explore and be a student. My psychic ability is different this week than it was a month ago, and it is different than it was 2 years ago. And a medium that I took a course with once said that our mediumship and psychicism has seasons. So
that's so interesting.
Yeah, there might be a time where, and this has happened in my practice, where mediumship is very abundant, and it's just like session after session, we have loved ones coming through with profound messages. And then sometimes it's more on spirit guides, and sometimes it's not on any of that. So it's never going to look one way, because energy doesn't look one way.
No.
Right? Energy looks many different ways. So yeah, it's fluid.
What was I gonna, something I've wanted to ask you something and it's just completely, oh, that's so annoying.
I hate that too.
So
use your claircognizance.
Yeah, I know, like call it in. Oh, hopefully it'll come back.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll message you after. Oh, when you're listening really intently, but then this thing comes through and you're like,
you can always interrupt.
Yeah. I don't know, but when you're like listening, so it's like, I don't want to stop you because I'm listening, and then this again, that's your intuition coming through. I do it now, like with writing. Sometimes I'd be walking along, and I've learnt now. Before, I'd be walking along, have a really good line for something that I'm working on, and I'm like, oh my god, if I don't write it there and then, I cannot get it back. I cannot get it back. So I write it down. And my boyfriend, when we're going to bed, sometimes like I'll get up and start writing on my phone. He's like, "What are you doing? I thought we were going to bed." And I was like, "I've got to write it down. It's gonna go. I'm not gonna get it back." And I really do have to catch it and write it down, even if it kind of doesn't fully make sense when you read it back.
You'll find the energy of
it's caught. So it's kind of, I don't know. I'm seeing like the BFG when he's got his things in the bottles and takes the lid off. But that's how I kind of feel like you have to catch it when it comes through, because like you said, it's so ephemeral, it'll just go so quickly. And what was I gonna, I'm trying too hard to remember it now. But with writing, I remember it now. What were you gonna say?
Oh, you say it while you remember.
I think this is it, or this is another thing, but like so the moon is in different signs it changes signs every 2.5 days. And what you're saying, like with the seasons, do you notice, like I notice if I'm doing a day of readings, the same theme will come through with everybody.
Yes.
Or there will be a card. There will be a card that everybody gets.
Totally.
And so do you think with that season thing is also down to the moon sign that it's in?
I do think that
Yeah.
a lot. One thing before I talk, because I want to talk about the astrology with the moon, because I think that has a profound effect.
Mm.
Um, I always say that the healer is always getting healed too, or the reader is getting read to, right? So when I started doing readings, that would happen. But then it would also happen where in a week, everyone I was reading for, there might be like a chapter in their reading that was similar to what was going on, like very similar. And it was hard because I'm like, am I projecting, my
Mm.
stuff? But I would trust it and it would, it would work, it would shift something. And I would talk to my mentor at the time and I'd be like, why? Like, this has happened over and over again. And she said, you will notice that like the universe and spirit is going to bring you people that are also going through what you're going through in a way. And you always get healed from it too. You're probably similar. I can't always remember what I say in readings if a client
And
is like,
even last night I did an
yeah,
event and I was like answering someone's question, channeling, and they're like, so what did you just say? I'm like, I don't know.
yeah, it's like recorded. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'll remember like moments like, oh, we were talking about your career or something like that. But yeah, there's that quality to it. And I mean, there's psychic weather and there's collective energetic weather. So when the collective is going through something, right? And tarot is archetypal. So it takes all the energy and it puts it into an archetype, into a structure, so we can identify it and talk about it and see it. With the moon, I noticed, and I was thinking about this before our talk, we say, when the moon is full, intuition is bigger, there's more illumination, but really, gosh, I've been on new moons where my intuition is strong. The cycle's always different, and that's because we have a consistent cycle going all the time, but it's always in a different sign. So the signs have a different quality. So a Pisces full moon is very different than a Capricorn full moon, energetically, collectively, and individually. So when the moon's in a water sign versus an air sign, but then also we have to consider, what is the sun in? What's going on with the sun sign? What are the other transits that are going on? Do we have a full moon in Cancer, which is really intuitive, but is there a Mercury retrograde and communication is skewed?
And
right?
also whether it's an eclipse.
Yeah, eclipse, yes.
Whole other story.
One thing, so I teach on, I rotate teaching Yoga Nidra and different alchemy practices on full moons and new moons, but in the eclipse season, I did not teach because eclipses are intense on me in my life always. I always just go into them like, all right, so it's going to be a thing, but the energy is frenetic and it's intense, and it's, in my opinion, it's not the best time to manifest or to do big magic, because there is big magic already happening. It's collective and universal versus just local and me working with the new moon or whatnot. But yeah, the signs really they shift how we're feeling. And I think it's important. I mean, if somebody's building their intuition and their psychic ability, use the energy that's local to you. So we were given on this planet, the forest and the woods, the ocean. We're given flames and fires, crystals, all these things that we can channel our energy into, but we're also given the celestial bodies. And over the years, we have collectively all agreed that Mercury retrograde means XYZ, or a full moon means this or that. So the more we collectively believe in it, the more tangible and felt that energy becomes. And that energy is something to work with. Eventually, I think in your own path and practice, and however your energetic, your magic, or spiritual practice is forming for you, you can get to a place where it's not disrupted, right, by celestial events and whatnot. But it's really, I think it's important and it's beautiful to work with them a lot in the beginning to align yourself and to grow and expand and all that.
I love that. Yeah, and that's the thing. I think sometimes when things are going on like Mercury retrograde, people just play the blame game.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
Or it's like, this is going on. It's like, and like you're saying, it's like this energy is tangible. Work with it. It's there for a reason, for us to, for that self-inquiry and to transform, and alchemy, which is like what you're all about. That's what it's for. It's not like, oh, like Mercury retrograde, like this, I was late for my flight, but actually I didn't actually keep in mind it's Mercury retrograde and there could be problems with traffic. So I like could have given myself extra time, but I didn't.
Totally. And it's the victim archetype. And we do this a lot as empaths, do this a lot. I did it a lot too. Like, oh, I'm just so sensitive. I feel everything so much. I can't turn it off, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not discrediting that. That is something that happens, but it's just that awareness, right? And the receptivity of your current self. How am I in this state right now? What am I saying? Is this true? And you know, with Mercury retrograde, there's an amazing astrologer here in Seattle, Stephanie Gailing, and she would come. She actually worked with us at Herbivore. I'd bring her in for bring her into the workplace, and she'd do workshops, and she would always teach us. She's like, retrogrades are about looking back. You know, what's going to resurface from the last retrograde to this retrograde. So there's jewels and there's treasure in that chapter. And that really stuck with me, right? Instead of this chaos in the moment. And then I eventually learned something that shifted how I looked at retrogrades. I made a video about this because I always thought, you know, we hear Mercury retrograde means technology's skewed, communication's bad, things aren't organized, et cetera, and that does happen, it is felt. But I always thought because of that, that meant that when a planet's retrograde, it's on the other side of the solar system. Because we see it, you know, it looks like it's changing direction in the night sky when really it's just a different side of its orbit. So I thought, oh, well, that means it's farther away from Earth. So like its battery power is low and all that stuff just falls. It's like, no, nothing works. But I was taught that retrograde with Mercury, it actually is when it's closest to Earth in its orbit.
Oh,
so
wow.
the retrograde phase means that it's closest. It's that little journey when it's closest to Earth. So what it actually does is it amplifies its magnetic effect, its energetic effect, its archetypal effect, it's closer felt. So it's not that the battery loses its power, it's that the battery, it's like you turn the battery on higher. It's like that setting on the blender where you turn it all the way up and it like flies everywhere. That's really what's happening. So it's supercharged, and it's not a time for blame, it's a time to learn, right? All these things are heightened. How do they need to be reworked?
And that just the reflection.
Yes.
It's the retrograde is going back, like what do I need to learn, or what do I need to revisit, and what's there or leave behind, like and like that leads on really nicely to the question that I love asking everyone on this, is like, if you could go back to another phase in your life, and that could be to just enjoy it and just be there, or to go back and give yourself a message, what would that what would that be?
I have two.
You can have two.
I have two phases because one's not enough. First thing that comes up, and I do believe that, you know, we choose the path and the paths that are meant for us, and that there's a series of paths and different routes. But when I was younger, I was bullied so much. I mean, I was a closeted gay kid. I was apparently gay. I did not pass as not, you know, like my partner, he was lucky, he grew up with a lot of gay friends, like 5. And
wow,
in the early 2000s, that's kind of not normal, at least over here. But you know, and he was a little bit more masculine, so that didn't happen a lot. But you know, back then I was very I isolated myself a lot, and I became very ashamed of my feminine energy. I didn't have an abundance of masculine energy, and I work with both of those energies very differently now. But I would, if I could go back to that phase and I could look at myself then, I would say, own your feminine power.
Oh, I love that.
Because in a few years, everybody's gonna be embracing it. And right? Like now we talk about the return of the divine feminine. And speaking of feminine and masculine, you know, we talk so much about the return of the divine feminine and we honor and that we need it. I don't think the divine feminine ever left. I think what left was the divine masculine, because we've been in toxic and we've been in wounded masculine. The systems that the world operates in and the matrices and the governments and all of that is very, when you look at wounded masculine energy, it exists in that, and then it puts us in as people into wounded feminine. But the divine feminine never left. The divine masculine is what we need. I guess that's another. That's
yeah,
another.
that's a whole other.
That's another
Like, I need to
phase.
do another series,
But,
and like there's so many conversations. Oh gosh, we need more time. We need more episodes. But what? And with another phase, like, oh, was that two?
yeah, the other one is very, kind of sounds superficial. When I was in art school, I turned down a venture. This is like my biggest regret. I turned down a venture to study abroad in Florence and be with a pretty cool painting program over there, because my mother, my practical mother, she was like, what are you gonna do? She's like, how are you going to afford it? What do you know, she talked all that into me. So I stayed to make $10 an hour, you know, in the summer, which whatever, that wasn't a lot or anything. I should have just went to Florence. It would have been such a cool adventure. But I was so nervous to travel when I was younger. So going to Florence by myself at age 21 scared the shit out of me, to be alone. And yeah, I would have told myself to go do that. I mean, think of all the adventures I could have had. So one's very deep and one's like, oh, that would have just been a fun trip.
Yeah, but then I think also like that, even with that one, even though it feels like you said, it's like it's a shallow one, it isn't, because that's probably, that experience has informed your decisions. That's probably why you've got into careers where you've traveled so much.
Exactly.
And done so much.
Yes. To expand and to see. Yeah.
So like you said, we need that moment where we don't do it and regret it.
Yes.
We don't not do that next time. So that
trust.
so that we trust.
That's my intuition. Yeah, I guess it's not superficial. It all ties back. But my intuition then was like, go. Go do that. And I didn't. The summer was okay, but you know, I made $10 an hour in a salon and, you know, smoked a lot of weed and went to the beach and just whatever. Could have been different. So
and like, is there anything else, like with as it's another phase, like what's next for you? Like, what do people need to know about you that's like coming up that they need to look out for?
Yeah, well, I've been starting to do much more talk on astrology. So, you know, most of my work is within the psychic realm and the energetic and psychic arts and yoga and whatnot. But I've studied astrology for almost like 20 years now, and I never called myself an astrologer. So I'm just starting to talk about it more and share the ideas and some predictions that I feel, you know, about things out there. So look out for that. But I'm also working on an oracle deck right now. And some intentional and mindfully made items that we'll see how they come about, but allowing my Pisces North Node to drive the wheel and be fluid. So that Virgo South Node, oh goodness, it wants everything to be structured and aligned and have a plan. So I'm trying to be very more Piscean with it. But yeah, I got some projects, and I've always dreamed of making an oracle deck.
You said that before when I saw you in London.
Yes. I mean, the way I got into reading, I was gifted the Wild Unknown, Kim Cron's deck, and that, I mean, she just created such a movement, because she created such a beautiful, artful deck. And there's been so many beautiful artists who've come out with these profound tools that connect people to their higher power. And I would love to make art like that. So that's in the works and still conceptualizing, but be on the lookout for that.
Oh, amazing. And how can people find you?
Yeah, so if anybody's interested in my offerings, working with me, doing psychic development or anything like that, website is alchemybydavid.com. And then Instagram and whatnot for videos, for any of my wild psychic forecasts and ideas. I also do about bi-weekly collective readings for free on Instagram Live. Instagram is also the same, Alchemy by David. So happy to see everybody there.
Yeah, I'm sure they will already. And I'll add when I go through the episode, like I'll make notes so I know where to get the links from you, so that if people listening like, where do I find that, or what's that they talked about, that will all be in the show notes, so that people can dive in deeper.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. This is so amazing.